Long ago in the land of Israel, the people walked under the heavy shadow of the Philistines. Once a proud nation, the children of Israel now toiled under foreign rule, stripped of freedom, of dignity. Their fields and homes lay barren, their temples silent. This oppression was no accident. It was the natural result of a long decline, a path that had begun in the hearts of the people themselves. For years, Israel had walked away from their God, casting aside his commandments, losing themselves in the gods of the nations around them, and as they grew further from God, they grew closer to defeat. In those days the people cried out to God, but he did not answer as quickly as before. Instead he watched, waiting for their hearts to turn back to him. The Israelites were lost, suffering under the weight of their own choices, waiting for someone to save them. In the midst of the darkness, God had not forgotten his people. Deep in the heart of Israel, he prepared a seed of hope, a plan that would begin with a barren woman named Manoah's wife. She was a woman of deep faith, though her days had passed without the joy of a child.
Do not be afraid. I bring you good news. You are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive a son. And this child will be no ordinary child. He is chosen by God, set apart from birth to begin the deliverance of Israel from the Philistines. But you must be careful. You must follow every instruction I give you. For the child shall be a Nazirite to God from the day he is born. He shall not cut his hair. No razor shall touch his head. He must drink neither wine nor any strong drink. He must not come into contact with anything unclean. All of these things are essential, for his strength will come from his vow to God.
In that moment she understood. Her son was to be more than a blessing for her. He was to be a gift for all of Israel, a symbol of hope in a time when hope seemed lost. The angel fades, and the woman collapses to her knees, overcome by awe and gratitude. She whispers a prayer of thanks, her eyes shining with newfound purpose. She rushes to her husband Manoah, who is working in the field. Out of breath, her face glowing, she calls to him,
Manoah, I have seen a man of God, an angel. He brought a message for us, a child. We are to have a son. The child must be raised as a Nazirite, dedicated to God from birth. He must never drink wine or cut his hair. He is meant to begin the deliverance of Israel.
Manoah prayed, asking God to send the messenger again, for he wanted to know how to raise this child. And in his mercy, God listened. The angel returned once more, and this time Manoah was ready. The angel reappears in the same glow of light. Manoah falls to his knees, humbled and fearful. Tell me, how shall we raise the boy? What is his mission?
Your wife must do all I have commanded. She must observe the Nazirite vow and keep it for the child's sake, for he is chosen by God to deliver Israel.
The angel looks at both Manoah and his wife, his gaze filled with a hint of sadness, as if he foresees the trials that will come. And then, in a flash of light, he is gone. And so Manoah and his wife waited, their hearts filled with both joy and a holy fear. They knew their son would be set apart, unlike any other child. They knew his path would not be easy, but he would be Israel's champion.
Remember, Samson, your strength is a gift from God. You are set apart, my son, chosen. But remember, your strength is not for show nor for your own desires. You were given this gift to serve a purpose, to help free our people from the Philistines.
As Samson grew, so did his strength and his desires. And though he knew he was called to a great purpose, his heart was drawn to things that would one day lead him astray. I have seen a woman in Timnah, a Philistine. I want you to get her for me as my wife. Samson said his parents were worried and asked him, Samson, must you go to the Philistines for a wife? Are there not women among our own people, among your own family? Samson, insistent, almost defiant, said, She pleases me well. I want her. It was a desire that troubled his parents, for they knew the dangers of marrying outside of Israel. Yet they did not know that even this was part of God's plan, a plan to bring Samson face to face with the very people he was destined to challenge. As they walk through the vineyards of Timnah, Samson suddenly feels an unsettling silence. Out of nowhere, a ferocious lion charges at him. His parents freeze in fear, but Samson stands his ground, a calm intensity in his eyes. And then, in that silent moment, something extraordinary happened. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon Samson. Without a weapon, he reaches out and tears the lion apart as if it were a young goat, leaving the dead beast lying on the path. His parents watch in awe and disbelief, not fully understanding what they have just witnessed. Later, at his wedding feast in Timnah, Samson is surrounded by 30 Philistine men who have come to celebrate with him, though their eyes hold suspicion. Eager to test them, Samson offers a riddle with an alluring prize. Let me tell you a riddle. If you can solve it during these 7 days of the feast, I will give each of you a set of clothes and linen garments. But if you cannot, you must give me 30 sets of clothes. The Philistines, skeptical, exchanging glances with the others, speak then. Tell us this riddle. Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet. The Philistine men look at each other, puzzled and frustrated, whispering among themselves. They grow agitated as the days pass, realizing they cannot solve the riddle. Desperate, they approach Samson's new bride. Threateningly, they told her, "Coax your husband into telling us the answer to the riddle, or we will burn down your father's house. Have you invited us here to make fools of us?"
Please, Samson, tell me the answer to your riddle.
Samson sighs. "Why should I tell you? I haven't even told my father or mother." But day after day, she wept before him, her tears wearing down his resolve, until finally Samson revealed the answer. And with that, the betrayal had begun. The Philistine men smirk as they give Samson the answer, taunting him. Samson's face darkens, realizing he has been betrayed. "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle." In a fit of rage, Samson leaves the wedding feast, traveling to a nearby Philistine town, where he strikes down 30 men and takes their clothes to pay off his debt. He returns to find his bride given to another man. Thus began the enmity between Samson and the Philistines, a cycle of vengeance and betrayal that would grow like a fire, igniting a war between a single man and a nation. Samson's heart was divided, caught between his calling and his desires. In his strength, he saw his purpose, yet in his weakness he saw his downfall. He was a man of destiny, but he was also a man, flawed and vulnerable. Samson's fame had spread throughout the land, a legend in the making. The Israelites saw him as a hero, the Philistines as a threat, and yet as his strength grew, so did his recklessness, for Samson often walked the line between his calling and his desires. One night Samson enters Gaza, a major Philistine city, under the cover of darkness. Word quickly spreads among the Philistines that he is within their walls, and they devise a plan to ambush him at dawn. In his arrogance, Samson moved among the Philistines as though he were invincible, slipping into their cities at will. But this time they were ready, plotting to trap him as he slept. As dawn approaches, Philistine soldiers gather at the city gate, waiting to capture him, but Samson rises before them, sensing the danger. With a surge of supernatural strength, he approaches the city gates, gripping them with both hands. With a mighty roar, he tears the gates from their foundations, hoisting them onto his shoulders and carrying them up a hill, leaving the soldiers in shock and awe. The Philistines watched in terror as Samson carried away their gates, a display of strength that none could match. Yet, for all his power, Samson was still blind to the weaknesses within himself. In the valley of Sorek, Samson met a woman named Delilah. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, beautiful, alluring, and mysterious. Her presence stirred his heart, clouding his mind, for she was both his desire and his undoing. They walked together in the valley, speaking softly. Samson is enchanted, drawn deeper into her presence with each encounter. Unaware that Delilah has been approached by the Philistine rulers who offer her a fortune to discover the secret of his strength. Seduce him, the Philistines told her. Find out what makes him so strong, so we can overpower him. Each of us will give you silver if you succeed. Delilah hesitates briefly, but the lure of wealth and power overcomes her doubts. She turns back to Samson, her gaze filled with feigned affection.
Samson, if you truly love me, why won't you share your heart with me? Why won't you trust me?
Again and again she pressed him, each time using his love for her as a weapon against him. But Samson guarded his secret, toying with her, unaware of the danger lurking behind her gentle words. The first time, he tells her that binding him with fresh bowstrings would weaken him. She tries it, but he snaps them easily. The second time, he claims that new ropes would render him powerless, but once bound, he breaks free. Each time she pleads with him, her frustration growing.
How can you say you love me when you won't confide in me? You've made a fool of me these 3 times, Samson.
Samson, weary of her constant questioning, finally lets his guard down, the intensity of his feelings for her clouding his judgment. Very well. I am a Nazirite from birth. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me. I would be as weak as any other man. A flicker of triumph crosses Delilah's face as she reassures him, stroking his hair gently until he falls into a deep sleep. And so, the mighty Samson, Israel's champion, lay vulnerable and unguarded, his strength now in the hands of betrayal. Delilah signals to the Philistine men waiting outside. They enter quietly, and as she cuts his hair, his strength drains away. Samson stirs but remains asleep, unaware of the irrevocable loss. As Samson wakes, he sees the Philistine soldiers approaching, but he feels different, weak, helpless. He tries to resist, but they easily overpower him, binding him in chains. His hair lies scattered on the floor, and his strength has vanished. In a moment, Samson's world shattered. His strength had left him, and with it, his purpose. The Philistines seized him, gouging out his eyes and binding him in bronze shackles. The mighty warrior, now blind and broken, was led to Gaza, humiliated before those he once defied. In a grand Philistine temple, a crowd gathers for a celebration. Samson, blind and humbled, is led in by guards to be mocked and ridiculed. The Philistine leaders jeer at him, confident in their victory. Samson stands between 2 massive pillars, his hands feeling the rough stone, his face turned toward heaven. Yet, even in his blindness, Samson's heart turned back to God. In his darkest moment, he sought the strength that had once flowed through him, not for himself, but for his people. In a broken, fervent whisper, Samson prayed, "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Strengthen me just once more. Let me with one blow take vengeance on the Philistines for my eyes." He braces himself between the 2 pillars, feeling a surge of strength return to him. The crowd laughs, oblivious to the power gathering within him. With a mighty cry, he pushes against the pillars, the entire structure groaning as the pillars begin to crack. And in that final act of sacrifice, Samson gave his life, bringing down the temple upon himself and his enemies. In his death, he accomplished what he could not in his life, a victory that echoed throughout Israel, a reminder that even a flawed hero can find redemption. The temple collapses, dust and debris filling the air as the Philistines fall alongside Samson. The screen fades to black. Samson's story is a tale of strength and weakness, of pride and redemption. He was a man chosen by God, gifted with extraordinary power, yet plagued by ordinary flaws. But even in his downfall, he found grace. Samson's life reminds us that our gifts are meant for a purpose greater than ourselves. And even when we stray, it is never too late to return, to seek redemption, and to fulfill our calling. Let us learn from Samson, for strength without purpose is hollow, and a life lived for oneself is easily swayed. Yet, in surrender, there is true power. And in humility, we find the courage to rise again.